All right, coming up next. Together, this duo say they are humble egomaniacs, and they co-host this weekly, locally produced podcast called You Big Dumb Idiot. Yeah, it looks like we got some fans. Please welcome to the stage Linda Gates-Markel and Andrew Schiver.
I'm here with my lovely co-host, Picante Pikachu, Lindsey Gates-Markel.
And I'm here with my lovely co-host, Peachy Keen Poltergeist, Andrew Schiver.
In September, we started producing a podcast called You Big Dumb Idiot. We did not know how to make a podcast.
We still don't. But we know a lot more than when we started. Cover your butts, because we're about to dive into the world of local amateur podcasting. A podcast is the perfect outlet for Andrew and me, first and foremost because we're egotistical monsters, and after a few years of friendship, began to believe that our conversations were too funny not to broadcast to the world.
We have lunch every Wednesday, and for a few weeks we toyed with the idea of doing something creative together. A podcast is inexpensive to produce and easy to manipulate to make ourselves sound like hilarious angels.
Being creative and having an outlet for that creativity is good for us. I have a master's degree in creative writing and have been an actor at the Station Theater for the past 7 years.
And I have a bachelor's degree in psychology and a lot of free time. We work well together, not to mention that we both literally and figuratively have ham in our veins.
In order to make a podcast, you need a topic. Andrew and I don't know very much about anything, so that's what we went with.
Each week we invite a special guest to talk about a subject that we know little to nothing about. It could be something a person has a degree in, or it might just be a hobby that he or she is passionate about. We've talked to a dentist about teeth, a new wave fan who loves hip-hop, a university instructor who teaches a class on human sexuality, and thousands more.
It's actually 14, but you get the point. The next thing you need is a way to record your podcast. At the very least, you'll need a high-quality microphone, a pair of decent headphones, and a nice, quiet place to record. We use the free program Reaper to record each week.
We won the jackpot because Lindsey's husband, renowned musician Larry Gates, has a recording studio in their house. Finding literally the perfect place to record won't be so easy for you.
Good luck.
Godspeed.
Once we started releasing the podcast, we were swarmed with people who were starved for fame, so finding guests has not been difficult. We made a schedule, and contrary to our slovenly characters, we stick to it pretty vehemently.
Every Wednesday we meet good God. Every Wednesday we meet to plan the show over lunch and end up stuffing our faces with garbage food.
We found a structure and we stick to it. For each show, we plan a brief introduction, write questions that showcase our guest's authority, and invent 1 or 2 ludicrous games. Comma Truthra for our sexpert, Hold Me Closer, Tony Danza for an Elton John fan, and Name of Thrones because winter is coming.
Then we insert a slew of Tim Gunn impressions in order to make it work.
Make it work.
Designers, make it work.
Having a set structure makes the show more entertaining and allows us to preserve our sanity so we're not flying by the seat of our pants every week.
No matter how engaging and fascinating and fun to look at our guest is, we try to keep recording sessions under an hour so they're easier for Lindsey to edit.
Every Friday, we record.
Lindsey and I do our introductions, then escort our guest into the studio for about 40 minutes of pure jackassery. Later, Lindsey will edit out about 80% of the jackassery.
I edit the podcast in GarageBand because it came free on my iMac, and I'm a dum-dum who likes colors and lights.
The finished product is about 35 minutes long and goes up on iTunes, where we then shamelessly promote it and ourselves on every social media outlet available.
Making a podcast available on iTunes is the most impossible part of the process. To make it easy, we use a hosting and publishing service called Libsyn. After the podcast is edited, I import it into my iTunes library and add metadata like the title and description. Then I upload that MP3 with the metadata embedded to Libsyn, which releases the episode via RSS to iTunes and Stitcher and makes it available to stream or download online.
Informative but extremely boring. Mm-hmm. After we had released a few shows, we naturally started to wonder how we could get free stuff out of this deal. Lindsey approached Matt Kitzmiller of Pizza M in Urbana, who miraculously agreed to be our sponsor.
Every week, Andrew picks up our pizza on his way to the studio, and we and our guests eat it like feral children who have never seen warm food.
In exchange, at the end of each show, we mention Pizza M and their gourmet pizzas made with fresh, local ingredients. Our obvious plug for them here is just a bonus. Since we started the podcast not knowing anything about podcasting or life in general, we've had to learn a lot as we go, and that's been the most fun part of the process.
From our dentist, we learned that Andrew doesn't floss enough and eats far too many raisins.
From Josh Lucas of Flying Machine Coffee, we learned that coffee is a fruit, not a bean like all you assholes thought just 20 seconds ago.
From our technology expert, we learned that Google Glass will eventually rule us all and is impossible to pronounce.
And from a guest obsessed with The Who's Tommy, we learned that Anne Margaret fucking loves beans.
A few weeks in, we broke down geographical boundaries by interviewing a San Franciscan guest via Skype. She appeared on the show as an expert in home improvement, the action, not the critically acclaimed television program starring Tim Allen, although, of course, that was all we talked about.
The miracle of video chatting allowed us to interview more than just our friends and neighbors and opens up our guest pool to the whole world, assuming they have high-speed internet and an Apple device.
Eventually, we did a live show at Mike and Molly's.
Our topic, Game of Thrones, or rather, the first 300 pages of Game of Thrones, because that's as far as Lindsey had read.
We had little to no idea what we were doing. Our one mic kept falling off the roll of paper towels we used as a stand, and it was amazing. We had so much fun.
One of Lindsey's questions for me was how the Game of Thrones theme song goes, and unprompted, the audience began to sing it in unison.
It was so heartwarming to learn that people actually like us and this silly, funny thing that we're doing. You Big Dumb Idiot is booked for guests through January, and in the new year, we plan to do more live shows at beautiful Pizza M in downtown Urbana.
Facebook.com/Pizza M.
We have upcoming shows on topics like football, wine, and The Simpsons. And the week of Christmas, we'll be releasing an episode of outtakes and unused clips from previous episodes.
The biggest lesson we've learned is that having a creative outlet like our podcast and a friend to create it with is a... Oh my God. I was too fascinated by Lindsey's face to read what I was saying.
That's common.
Makes everything in life fall into place.
Who knew 3 months ago that we could spend our Friday nights laughing hysterically over movies in which teens get murdered in the woods, or the life and career of Jonathan Taylor Thomas, or how to make a disco Jesus costume from a bag of glitter and a crown of thorns?
Since starting the show, we've started to see everything as a potential topic, and we've learned that everyone has a unique skill set, whether or not they know it.
There are still billions of things that we don't know, but we're learning by doing.
We encourage you all to follow your unique skill set, whether or not you have an actual plan or goal in mind.
And then come on our podcast and talk about it.
Thank you. Bye.